The Tibetan Plateau lies in the southwest of China, with Xinjiang to the north, Sichuan to the east, and Yunnan to the southeast. It borders Myanmar, India, Bhutan, and Nepal, linking China to Southeast Asia. Covering some 2.5 million square kilometers, it accounts for just shy of a quarter of Chinese territory. The high mountains along the Himalayas and the Tibetan Plateau, itself around 4,500 meters above sea level, provides a natural buffer for the Chinese heartland, protecting the Han Chinese through natural barriers and strategic depth. From Beijing's perspective, if the Tibetan region were open to foreign influence, it could leave the Chinese core vulnerable. China is particularly concerned about the traditional relations between Tibet and neighboring India. Historically, Indian cultural and religious influence spread into and through Tibet, and prior to 1950, the majority of Tibetan trade was with India, not China. Beijing views India's hosting of the exiled Tibetan government as a clear sign of India's intent to undermine Chinese authority and to give New Delhi a strategic advantage in any regional competition or confrontation. Through history, Chinese empires have had mixed relations with Tibet, and it was not until the Qing dynasty that the Chinese made a substantial effort to not only dominate Tibetan territory, but also gain authority over cultural and social structures through control of Tibetan Buddhism. Historically in China, when the central government is weak, control over the buffer regions is weak, leaving those areas vulnerable to internal separatism or foreign influence. The strength of the domestic and overseas Tibetan movement is seen as the single biggest ethnic challenge to Beijing. China's leaders fear if Tibet were to break away, it could trigger a domino effect, stripping China of much of its territory and its strategic buffers. Potential Tibetan moves for independence also challenge China's attempts at overall territorial integrity. The Tibet Autonomous Region is close to 13% of Chinese territory, has a population of around 3 million. Minority ethnic groups in China overall make up around 7% of the population, but ethnic areas of China comprise some 60% of territory. There's another consideration for Beijing beyond national unity and strategic depth. Tibet has been dubbed Asia's water tower. The Qinghai-Tibet Plateau is the source of some 20 major rivers, and Tibet's glaciers and lakes hold some 400 billion cubic meters of fresh water. Waters originating in Tibet supply around 30% of China's fresh water through major rivers including the Yellow and the Yangtze, and supply other major regional rivers, including the Brahmaputra, the Mekong, the Irrawaddy, and the Salween. Availability and control over fresh water is growing more important as populations rise, regional climates adjust, and water use increases. In addition to water, these rivers are seen as potential or realized sources of hydropower, and Beijing has already laid plans for both water diversion projects and additional dams along the major rivers, some which can increase tensions with neighboring states. Overall, Tibet remains one of the most important, yet one of the most contentious of China's strategic buffer zones. Ethnic instability, perceived foreign interference, and competition over key natural resources gives China little choice but to remain heavily involved and focused on Tibet.